Daniel whispered, "No, this can't be real," as the monitor glowed with spreadsheets showing millions routed to shadow accounts. His hands trembled, each click revealing deeper corruption. The hum of the empty office felt deafening. He leaned back, staring at the screen, feeling as though the walls were pressing in. His badge was still warm from the security gate downstairs, but he now feared it wouldn't work tomorrow. The cursor blinked like a countdown, daring him to act. Daniel muttered, "They put my name here. Why me?" He scrolled through expense reports masked as charity payments and vendor contracts that didn't exist. The silence of the room felt alive, as if cameras watched. He glanced at the clock, 2:37 a.m. Every instinct screamed to shut it down, but something stronger forced him to keep digging. Sweat traced down his temple as his mouse hovered over an email chain marked confidential. He double-clicked. The subject line read, "Executive retainers, discretion required." His chest tightened. He could almost hear footsteps in the hall, though he knew he was alone. He whispered again, "This is the end of me, isn't it?" The glow of the screen cast sharp shadows across his face, making the truth impossible to ignore. Daniel slammed his laptop shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the empty office. His heart raced as if he'd been caught red-handed. He whispered, "What do I even do now?" He thought of his wife Anna asleep at home, unaware of the storm he had just stepped into. The silence of the office mocked him, daring him to make a choice. His chest hurt, not from exertion but from dread. He imagined tomorrow's meeting, the executives smiling as if nothing had happened, their words dripping with control. Daniel pressed his palms against his eyes. "They'll destroy me," he muttered. He stuffed papers into his bag, though he wasn't sure why. Evidence or burden, it was impossible to tell. The elevator chimed in the distance, and he froze. He waited, breath shallow, until the sound faded. He told himself, "Get out. Just get out." But even as he moved toward the door, he knew he was already too deep to escape. At home, Daniel sat in darkness, the glow of his laptop illuminating his strained face. Anna stirred in the bedroom, her voice soft. "Why are you up?" Daniel forced a smile that she couldn't see. "Work. Just work." But inside, terror gnawed. He clicked through emails, each one another brick in a wall of lies. He imagined the headlines if this leaked, then pictured his children's school, their little faces, their friends' whispers. Fear wasn't just about him anymore. It was about them. He thought of pulling the plug, but something stronger forced him forward. Daniel arrived at work the next morning, his badge trembling in his hand. He pressed it to the turnstile. For a second, the red light blinked. His stomach dropped. Then, mercifully, it turned green. He exhaled so hard it hurt. Walking in, he noticed colleagues looking at him strangely, or maybe it was just his paranoia sharpening edges. He muttered to himself, "Act normal." But every laugh he heard felt staged, every whisper poisoned. He sat at his desk, screensaver glowing with the company logo, and thought, "This place is a prison painted white." Daniel's inbox pinged with a new email marked "Mandatory Meeting." His throat tightened. He opened it to see his name listed alone beneath the subject line. He muttered, "This is it." His mind raced. Had they already discovered his late-night search? His palms dampened as he closed the email and stared at his reflection in the monitor. For a long moment, he didn't move, just breathed. Then, slowly, he whispered, "I need to decide who I am now." Daniel sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands, as the morning light crept across the floor. Anna placed a mug of coffee in front of him, her voice soft. "You didn't sleep, did you?" He forced a smile, shaking his head. Their daughter Emily came bounding in, hair messy from sleep, her laughter piercing the heavy silence. Daniel tried to laugh too, but his chest tightened. He thought, if they destroy me, they destroy them too. Anna studied him, worry written across her face though she said nothing. Daniel whispered to himself, "I can't let this touch them." The clinking of Emily's spoon in her cereal bowl echoed like a metronome counting down. His phone buzzed with another company notification, and he shoved it face down on the table. Anna said, "You're scaring me." Daniel looked at her, eyes hollow, and replied, "It's nothing." But the lie stung more than the truth. Later, Daniel walked Emily to school. She clung to his hand, asking endless questions about her friends and the playground. He answered with distracted nods, mind elsewhere. The school bell rang and she hugged him tightly, whispering, "Don't be sad, Daddy." His heart cracked at her innocence. Watching her skip through the gate, he thought, "I have to protect this, no matter the cost." The bright chatter of children felt like a world he didn't belong to anymore. A parent nearby waved. Daniel forced a wave back, but his smile was hollow. He muttered under his breath, "Hold it together." His phone buzzed again in his pocket, dragging him back to the storm he couldn't outrun. That night, Daniel sat with Anna on the couch. The TV played softly, but neither paid attention. She whispered, "You've changed. I don't know what's happening, but I can feel it." Daniel stared at the floor, words caught in his throat. He wanted to confess everything, but fear of dragging her into danger kept him silent. Finally, he said, "It's just work stress." Anna shook her head, eyes glistening. "It's more than that." He looked at her and saw both love and fear, the weight of her reliance pressing into him. He reached for her hand, squeezing gently, and whispered, "I'll protect us. That's all that matters." But inside, he knew those promises were already breaking. Daniel lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling as Anna slept beside him. The house was silent, except for the ticking clock. His mind replayed the email subject over and over like a nightmare. Executive retainers, discretion required. He thought of Anna's face if she knew. He thought of Emily's laughter and how quickly it could vanish. His breath caught, and he whispered into the darkness, "They'll ruin us all." He closed his eyes, trying to imagine another path, but every scenario ended in fire. His hand brushed against Anna's, and he gripped it tightly, a lifeline in the dark. He swore silently, "I'll carry this alone." The next morning, Daniel walked into the office lobby again, but this time he wasn't just afraid. He was determined. Anna's words and Emily's laughter echoed in his head. He muttered under his breath, "They don't get to take this from me." Yet as he stepped onto the elevator, he felt the walls closing in. Colleagues avoided his eyes, their silence louder than accusation. Daniel gripped his briefcase tighter, thinking, "They'll smile in meetings, but knives wait behind their teeth." The elevator doors closed, and he stared at his reflection in the steel, a man divided between fear and resolve. Daniel entered the boardroom with his stomach knotted. Executives sat in a semicircle, their smiles sharp as glass. Mr. Carter said, "Daniel, we need to talk about your performance." Daniel nodded, masking the terror in his chest. The polished oak table reflected their cold faces, each one a mask of politeness hiding calculation. Daniel whispered to himself, "They know." The air smelled of leather chairs and expensive cologne, suffocating him. He tried to answer calmly, "Of course, I'll review my output." Laughter broke out among them, thin and cruel. His ears rang. Every word from them felt like a noose tightening. He gripped his pen so tightly it might snap. He thought, "They're sending a message. Sit down, stay quiet, or be buried." That afternoon, Daniel returned to his desk to find a warning slip from HR waiting for him. His hands shook as he read the words, "Performance concerns." He muttered, "They're building a file on me." Around him, coworkers whispered in hushed tones, eyes darting away when he glanced up. A colleague, Mark, once his ally, passed by without acknowledgement. The silence was worse than open hostility. Daniel's pulse hammered in his ears. He typed on his keyboard, but nothing made sense. He thought, "They've already decided my fate. Everything else is theater." At home, Daniel sat at the dinner table with Anna and Emily. Anna asked softly, "How was work?" Daniel forced a smile, saying, "Fine." Emily chattered about her school project. but Daniel barely heard her words. His fork hovered over his plate without moving. He thought, they're poisoning my world piece by piece. Anna noticed his silence and pressed. Something's wrong. He shook his head. It's nothing. Emily laughed, but even her laughter couldn't pierce his fog. Daniel's eyes stung as he realized his fear was bleeding into their sanctuary. He whispered to himself, I can't let them see me break. Late at night, Daniel walked past the office copy room and froze. Shredded paper filled the bins, contracts and receipts torn into pieces. His chest tightened as he pulled out scraps, piecing together numbers he recognized. He whispered, they're erasing everything. He stuffed fragments into his bag, heart racing, afraid someone would catch him. A sudden creak in the hallway made him nearly collapse. He shoved the scraps back, sweat dripping down his face. He thought, they're covering their tracks. And I'm standing in the fire. The next morning, Daniel overheard two managers whispering near the break room. One said, he's asking questions. The other replied, then he's finished. Daniel froze, coffee mug trembling in his hand. He walked away quickly, but their voices followed him like knives. His stomach churned. He thought, I'm already condemned. Returning to his desk, he noticed colleagues turning away, screens glowing like silent witnesses. He muttered, I'm alone in this. His reflection in the black screen of his monitor stared back, haunted, fragile, but determined. Daniel met Mark in the parking garage late at night, shadows stretching under dim lights. Mark whispered, you're in over your head, Daniel. Daniel clenched his jaw, asking, so you knew? Mark avoided his eyes, shifting nervously. It's bigger than you think. You should walk away. Daniel felt his chest burn. You were supposed to have my back, he said bitterly. The echo of their voices in the concrete space felt like confessions carved in stone. Mark muttered, I can't help you anymore. Daniel's stomach sank. The betrayal wasn't sharp, it was hollow, like the ground falling away beneath him. He realized his only ally had already chosen survival over truth. The next day, Daniel's email access was suddenly revoked. His password failed again and again. His screen froze, flashing, access denied. He muttered, they're shutting me out. Around him, coworkers glanced curiously, then quickly turned away. Mark passed by without a word, eyes fixed ahead, face unreadable. Daniel's pulse quickened. The company was isolating him, dismantling his ability to fight back. He thought, they're not just silencing me, they're erasing me. He pressed his palms against the desk, whispering, not yet, not without a fight. But fear gnawed at him. He was trapped in their system, playing on their terms. That evening, Daniel confronted Mark outside the office. Rain-slicked pavement glistened under street lights. Why did you sell me out? Daniel demanded. Mark's voice shook as he replied, I have a family too. They warned me. Daniel's fists clenched. You think they'll spare you? Mark looked broken, muttering, at least I'll still have a job. The betrayal carved deep into Daniel's chest. He whispered, you were the only one I trusted. Mark turned away, shoulders slumped, unwilling to meet his gaze. Daniel stood in the rain, water dripping down his face, unsure if it was rain or tears. Daniel returned home soaked, Anna waiting in the doorway. What happened? She asked, eyes full of fear. He shook his head, voice cracking. They're closing in. Anna gripped his arm, whispering, then stop before it's too late. He stared at her, torn between her plea and his conscience. If I stop, they win, he said. Anna's tears shimmered in the dim light. If you keep going, we lose everything, she replied. Daniel's chest ached, caught between love and duty, knowing either choice would break something he couldn't fix. Alone in his study, Daniel spread the shredded paper fragments across his desk. His hands shook as he pieced them together, numbers forming the outline of hidden accounts. His voice was barely a whisper. It goes higher than I thought. The realization sank in. Executives weren't just complicit, they orchestrated everything. He felt the walls closing in. He whispered again, "I'm already marked." Outside, thunder cracked, rattling the windows. He leaned forward, staring at the fragments like they were weapons, his only defense in a war he hadn't chosen but could no longer escape. Daniel entered the courtroom with shaking hands, clutching a folder of evidence. The air felt heavy with judgment. Lawyers whispered, pens scratched, and the silence buzzed with tension. The judge called his name, and he stood. His throat tightened as he muttered, "This is it?" He looked at Anna in the gallery, her tear-streaked face holding both pride and fear. Emily was absent, too young for this world of corruption and consequence. Daniel opened the folder, hands trembling, revealing documents he had pieced together from scraps. His voice cracked at first, but grew stronger as he declared, "The company has been paying bribes and silencing employees. I have proof." The room erupted in gasps. Executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, faces pale. Daniel's heart pounded, but his voice carried like a hammer against the walls. For the first time, he was louder than their silence. Mr. Carter leaned forward, his voice dripping with disdain. "These are baseless accusations." Daniel's stomach clenched, but he forced his voice steady. The records speak for themselves. The lawyers circled like vultures, throwing words meant to shred him. "Disgruntled employee?" one sneered. Daniel gripped the stand, sweat on his brow, whispering to himself, "Stay standing." Each question struck like a whip, but he refused to fall. He glanced again at Anna, her hands clasped tightly, her silent plea echoing in his chest. He thought, "If I break now, everything dies with me." He raised his voice, each word carrying more conviction, each phrase a nail in the coffin of their lies. Daniel held up a torn page taped together, the numbers barely legible. "These were shredded to erase the truth," he said, voice echoing. The room leaned in. The judge narrowed her eyes, asking, "Do you swear this is accurate?" Daniel replied, "Yes, I risked everything to bring it here." Gasps followed. Executives whispered frantically, their calm unraveling. Mr. Carter slammed his fist on the table, snarling, "You'll regret this." Daniel's hands shook, but he smiled faintly, whispering, "Not anymore." The weight of fear that had chained him for weeks began to crack, replaced by raw defiance. As Daniel spoke, the silence deepened, broken only by the scratching of pens and the gasps of listeners. "I will not be silent," he declared, voice ringing. For the first time, fear no longer ruled him. Executives' faces twisted with rage, but he stood taller, the fire in his chest brighter than their threats. The gallery stirred, whispers of sympathy rising like a tide. Anna pressed her hands to her lips, eyes glistening with pride. Daniel thought, "Even if they bury me, they can't bury the truth." The judge's gavel struck, demanding order, but Daniel's words already hung in the air, undeniable and unerasable. The climax came as Daniel dropped a final document onto the table. "This is the account," he declared, "where millions were funneled." The courtroom erupted into chaos, lawyers shouting, executives pale as ghosts. Mr. Carter's smile cracked, fury boiling through his facade. Daniel stared at him, whispering, "It's over." His heart thundered, but for the first time he felt free. The judge hammered her gavel, shouting for order, but the damage was done. The walls of silence had shattered, replaced by truth echoing in every corner. Daniel exhaled, whispering to himself, "No turning back." Daniel walked out of the courthouse into flashing cameras and shouting reporters. Microphones shoved toward his face, voices screamed, "Are you the whistleblower? Do you regret it?" He kept his head down, whispering, no comment. The crowd's noise pressed in like a storm, his every step heavier than the last. Anna clutched his arm, guiding him through the chaos, her voice urgent, "Just keep walking." Daniel thought, "The truth is out. But at what price?" He glanced at her face, worn, frightened, but unwavering. The world now knew his name, but not the toll etched into his bones. That night, Daniel sat in the living room, the TV flashing headlines, "Corporate Scandal Exposed." His name scrolled across the screen. Anna muted the sound, whispering, "We can't go anywhere without being recognized." Daniel rubbed his temples, saying, "I didn't want this." Emily peeked from the hallway, asking softly, "Daddy, are we safe?" His heart cracked. He answered, "Yes," though doubt gnawed at him. The weight of justice didn't feel like victory. It felt like exile. He thought, "The company burns, but so does my life." Days later, Daniel returned to the office to collect his belongings. His badge no longer worked. Security escorted him in silence. His desk was stripped bare, a cardboard box waiting. Coworkers avoided his gaze, whispering as he passed. He thought, "I'm a ghost here now." Mark glanced at him from across the room, eyes heavy with shame, but he said nothing. Daniel filled the box with photos, papers, fragments of a life erased. He whispered, "Goodbye." Not to the office, but to the man he once was. At home, Daniel and Anna sat at the kitchen table, bills and letters spread before them. Anna said, "They froze our accounts." Daniel closed his eyes, whispering, "They're still fighting." She slammed a letter down, voice trembling. "How do we survive this?" He reached across, taking her hand, saying, "We'll find a way." But the truth hung heavy. Every resource was draining, every door closing. Their love was still intact, but the weight of sacrifice threatened to crush it. Daniel thought, justice costs more than anyone admits. One evening, Daniel stood alone outside, staring at the quiet street. The neighborhood looked unchanged, but nothing in his life was the same. He whispered, "The company will survive this, but will I?" His phone buzzed with another unknown number. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the sky, where the last light of dusk faded into night. He thought of Emily's laughter, Anna's tears, and the hollow victory he carried. For a long moment, he stood motionless, a man both broken and unbowed. Daniel sat in the kitchen before sunrise, the world outside still cloaked in gray silence. A single resignation letter lay before him, his pen resting across it like a dagger. He whispered, "One signature and I vanish." His hand trembled, not from indecision but from the knowledge that survival had finally replaced defiance. The clock ticked steadily, each second pressing harder against his chest. Anna walked in slowly, her eyes swollen and red, carrying the weight of sleepless nights. She asked, "Are you really going to do this?" He looked at her, words caught in his throat, then pushed the paper forward. His voice cracked as he said, "It's the only way they'll leave us alone." Anna reached for his hand, but he pulled it back, ashamed. The silence between them screamed louder than any argument. Daniel stared at the letter again, whispering, "This is how they win." Daniel walked through the office one final time, a cardboard box in his arms containing the remnants of his career. Family photos, a mug, a few pens, all reduced to meaningless weight. Colleagues kept their eyes fixed on screens, pretending to work but whispering when he passed. Their silence was a wall, impenetrable and suffocating. He thought, "They don't see me as a man, just a warning." Passing Mark's desk, he slowed. Mark glanced up, shame flooding his face, but no words came. Daniel whispered, "You chose them." The words burned, but Mark didn't reply. He pressed the elevator button, the hum of machinery echoing like a dirge. When the doors slid shut, Daniel caught his reflection, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow, a man broken yet still standing. He whispered to his reflection, "You're still here. That's enough." That evening, Daniel lingered outside Emily's bedroom door. Laughter spilled out, pure and untouchable, the only sound untouched by the corruption eating his world. Anna appeared behind him, her voice low. "She doesn't know, and I don't want her to." Daniel nodded, whispering, "She deserves better." He pushed the door open gently, watching Emily sprawled on the floor, crayons scattered like bright fragments of hope. She looked up with a grin. "Daddy, come play with me." His chest ached as he smiled back, forcing the darkness to the edges of the room. He dropped to the floor beside her, his hands clumsy as he picked up a crayon. Emily giggled. "Yours looks funny." Daniel laughed softly, his voice breaking under the weight of unspoken truth. He thought, If nothing else survives, let her laughter survive. Later, Daniel sat alone on the porch, night air pressing against his skin like a warning. His phone buzzed in his hand, the caller ID blank. It rang once, twice, 3 times, echoing in the silence of the empty street. He didn't answer. He let it ring until it stopped, the silence afterward even heavier than the sound. His breath misted in the cool air as he whispered, "They won't stop." He placed the phone on the railing, staring into the horizon where shadows swallowed the last trace of light. Every rustle of the wind sounded like footsteps, every car in the distance like eyes watching. He thought, "I've burned their secrets, but they'll keep coming for me in the dark." He leaned back, whispering again, "I'll never be free, but I'll never bow." In his study, Daniel opened a notebook, blank pages staring back at him like judgment. He pressed the pen hard against the paper, writing one line. It was worth it. His hand lingered over the words, the ink bleeding into the page like a wound. He closed the notebook slowly, leaving it in the center of the desk as a monument to everything lost and everything won. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, the storm finally breaking. He whispered into the empty room, "No one can erase this." His reflection in the rain-streaked window looked older, scarred, but unbroken. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was survival, raw and unresolved. The final blow wasn't his destruction, but the truth echoing beyond him, louder than the company that tried to bury it.